Well, welcome everybody, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us for our live event. My name is Mark Hudson, CEO of Squirrel 365, and today I'm joined by Paul Grill, President of Infosol, and Donald MacCormick, Chief Strategy Officer here at Squirrel 365. At the moment, all attendees are in listen-only mode. We're recording this live event, and it will be available to you all later today. The event is also being streamed live on LinkedIn Live. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and also I encourage you to use the Q&A and chat panels during the session, as I'll be able to collate questions for later or even respond directly within the chat. Okay, so let's get started. Thanks to the Snowflake Data Cloud, thousands of organizations now have seamless access to explore, share, and unlock the true value of their business data. Today, we're going to focus on how Squirrel 365 can help you share the value of that data held within Snowflake and deliver it to more people more easily and in a much quicker time frame. We're also going to see how using Squirrel 365, you can unblock BI initiatives that maybe have stalled due to COVID, budget, or resource constraints. And finally, we'll also take a look at how you can take your first steps to deploy business application strategy built against your Snowflake data. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to your hosts, Donald MacCormick, and first, Paul Grill. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Very excited to be talking today about Squirrel 365 and InfoBurst and Snowflake. And as you can see from the slide here, I don't think people realize how appropriate this is, because I'm based here in Phoenix, Arizona, and it snowed this week. And we do have squirrels. So we actually saw squirrels in snow, which is a rare event because, you know, the snow that we get here, maybe once every 5 to 7 years, lasts for all of an hour or two. So very, very exciting. But anyway, let's talk about, you know, Squirrel 365, InfoBurst and Snowflake. I mean, Squirrel 365, no-code tool, very, very exciting for a lot of business intelligence customers out there, but also for anyone who wants to build applications quickly and effectively and inexpensively. And during this time of COVID, there's you know, incredible relevance around that. I wrote a blog on this earlier this month about, you know, how, you know, 2021 is going to be the year for no code and BI. And I think we're already starting to see that, and it's only January now as people try to dig out from the after effects of the pandemic and start to get new projects going, start to get new applications going, try to make up, you know, for time lost during the pandemic. At the same time, there's been this trend that's been happening within most organizations, both enterprise and medium and even small companies as well, to move, you know, from on-premise solutions to the cloud. And lots of people are now, you know, running cloud-based applications. You know, many people have been running them for years, you know, applications like Salesforce for their CRM and so forth. And now we're starting to see people look at moving their business intelligence solutions into the cloud as well. And of course, it only makes sense to move the business intelligence solution into the cloud when you move the data sources that it's accessing into the cloud, which for a lot of people means those data warehouses, those ODSs, those data marts, those repositories. And it's interesting as I, you know, watch the business object space and I watch the Tableau base, that probably the most popular data warehouse in the cloud right now is Snowflake. And so lots and lots of people are experimenting and now running in production with Snowflake data lakes, data warehouses in the cloud and wanting to access that data directly from Snowflake. And so the fact now that we can do this with Squirrel 365 is incredibly exciting. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's more importantly, what we're going to show today as well. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Donald, and Donald's going to show you how we can do this. Over to you, Donald.
Thank you very much, Paul, and welcome everyone to the webinar. So as Mark and Paul have said, today's premise is all about delivering your Snowflake data to more people, more easily, faster, and at lower cost, and take the first step from dashboards to apps. And this last piece is, many of you won't know what I mean by that, but I think it's in some ways the most important part of this. We are seeing, and I believe you will hear in my voice as we go through this, how much I believe this to be true, that we are moving to a point where apps are eating the world. You look on any device around you, you use apps. They're small, focused pieces of functionality that help you in your day. They allow you to get in, get what you need, get out, and get on with whatever you were doing. And apps are going to do the same to business intelligence. It's no longer going to be enough to have a dashboard that's got a couple of quadrants with some charts in it. We're moving to a point where people will expect the same level of capability, the same level of interaction from their BI as they do from the apps on the phone or their tablet or anywhere else around them. And I like to talk about how the most obvious example of this to me, or the most canonical example of this, is weather website forecast, where you've got huge amounts of data presented by an interface that anyone can use. No one was trained on it. You just click on it. What's it going to be like tomorrow? Is it going to rain? Do I need to take an umbrella? Can I go for a picnic at the weekend? You're navigating huge amounts of data, but through a really friendly interface that allows you just to pick it up, get what you need, get out, and get on with your life. And that's exactly what we are talking about today when we talk about moving from dashboards to apps. Is that sort of functionality. They look like dashboards, but every one of them has a little bit of extra functionality that makes them easier to use and more streamlined and better for the business and the business people who are using them. And so how does Squirrel 365 and InfoBurst do this? Well, what we do is we create stunning web-based dashboards and applications from your Snowflake data, and indeed from any other data you might have. So you want a Snowflake on-premise, in the cloud combination, we can do that as well. So if you've ventured in here, even though you're not a Snowflake customer, you're more than welcome. We can help you do exactly the same thing to do. But the focus today will be how we do this on top of Snowflake. And critically, this is in days or weeks, not months or years. This is not like big projects. You've got to be agile here. So the ability to do this quickly and easily, and we'll see an amazing example in a minute of something that was done in 3 weeks to real, I was going to say business effect, but actually almost social effect at the beginning of the outbreak of COVID. I say we'll see that in a slide or two. And you can do this with just spreadsheet knowledge. And on top of that, you use clicks, not code. There's no coding environment. As Paul's, I would encourage you to go and read Paul's blog. It's a great sort of intro as to why no code is the way forward. It's gaining in sort of outside of business intelligence. It will be the way forward inside business intelligence. Now, how do you create these apps with no code so that you can quickly and easily get things out to people, try again, agile methodology, deliver and deliver and deliver again, and do all of this an amazingly low cost of total ownership. That's the value proposition that Squirrel 365 and InfoBurst provide. And so I want to actually go back a few years to when I was in a completely different company, still in the BI market. But one of our customers back then had possibly the largest ROI that I've ever seen from a business intelligence system. And it's interesting because it wasn't really sophisticated. It wasn't an amazing sort of looking thing, but it was in its effect on the business. It was truly remarkable. And the quote there, and you can find this quote out, and I won't say who it is because obviously I'm not working with them anymore, but you find this quote online if you search hard enough. He said, "My organization needed something which allowed for quick drill down of aggregated sales data through millions of records to help our category merchants see underlying data and driving sales performance. They can now do that research in seconds. We have gained an average time saving of 1.5 hours per employee per day." That's almost 20% improvement across, I think it was about 200 or 300 people. And amazing. And it really wasn't, what they allowed them to do was to drill and filter data as they navigated down, but through an interface that they could just pick up and use. Before they had to scrabble around for the data, all the data was there. But the other ways of doing it, so we'll give them an ad hoc query tool. It was a specific requirement that they needed, and this interface that they gave them allowed them to do that. Now, as I say, this was a while ago, so I don't have the specific example to hand. But what I do have is I've created, and again, realized I created this yesterday. So this is not sort of like weeks of effort. This was a couple of hours yesterday. I pulled this together on top of Snowflake on the City Bikes data that they give for the sample for their trial. And so it was exactly, in fact, what I'm going to do is bring this up So you can see this live. So it's a web page. I'm in my browser. And what I can do here is navigate this data. So it's 2016, 2017, 2018. So I click on here. That's actually issuing a query to the database, and it's come back. Again, query to the database, and it's come back. So these are live queries against Snowflake, and we'll look at that a little happening in real time a little later on. I can change my customer type, subscriber to customer, but I can also drill into it. And remember, this is exactly the setup with some filter controls, drill controls, and some low-level detail that the quote that you just saw came from. It was this type of interface operating on millions of rows of data. And what you see here is operating, as we'll see, on about 61 million rows of data in Snowflake. Not the biggest Snowflake database, I'll grant you, but nonetheless, a non-trivial example. And so what can we do here? We can drill. So I say big button drill. So I drill down again, that's another query going to the database so that we can come back and see what's underlying there. I can drill down further into here. Now notice when I drill to the lowest level, when I get stations, the icon changes. And we'll talk a lot about dynamic UI. So you've got to be able to do that, guide the user through the process with the user interface so they don't need to be trained. So now I say, oh, I click on one of these, and now I can see, click on here, back to the database. Now I'm getting the rides. Again, it's cycle data. These are the rides that I'm from that station for those type of customers in this year. So it's, and actually it's the top 30 by duration, because there are obviously a lot of them in the year. So it's, you can see I've gone from a 62 million row data set down to a very specific to individual underlying transactions in here with 3 or 4 clicks of the mouse. And it's exactly like the weather example I was saying. I started at the top, I've ended up in a place that I need to be, but it's very quick and easy. The interface guides me, it's dynamic, so it tells me what to do. So see, I click up when I'm up at the top, I no longer get the arrow to go up, so it's all dynamic so that I can't make a mistake, I can just use it. So this is the ability, and this is exactly what that customer were doing. They were allowing their merchandisers to get into the bottom of the data where they needed to be to make the next decision, but do it as quickly as possible. Because ironically, and you possibly may not have heard anyone say this before, you want your users using your business intelligence for as little time as possible. Nobody's job description is dashboard viewer or BI application viewer. They've got a job, the operational. I mean, maybe I'm not talking about the analysts and their sort of ad hoc query tool. They don't know. There's things like Tableau, absolutely. But the 90% of the organization who are just operational, they're trying to do a job. They don't want to be in the data. They want to be out doing their jobs, driven by the data. So the quicker they can get down to the details that they need, they can get in, get what they need, get out, and get on with their jobs, because it's getting on with their jobs that makes them effective. That's what they do for the organization. It should be data driven, but the data needs to be to come as readily as possible. And so I said there was an amazing example. That's probably the best ROI I've ever seen from a BI application or dashboard, and it was relatively simple despite its high ROI. Another one I want to share with you here, and I don't have live because it's an existing Squirrel 365 customer. It's USPI, who run surgical and care facilities around the US, and I did a webinar with David, their BI manager, and this is the one that he created here. And just to show you some of the features in here. So this looks like a dashboard. You see, it looks like a normal dashboard, but it's interactive and does much more than just filtering. So the first thing it does is you can filter it, as you would expect on almost any dashboard. But then you can drill through in a way which makes it easy. So here we come down to surgical gowns. You click on anything, you see the breakdown. So these are how the 72 here are broken down across facility. Just click on it and get to it. It's really easy to use. It's a little pop-ups. You don't have to go to another screen. You don't need to know how to use it. It comes to the data, or the application essentially comes to the user. And even change the view completely to a different view. So here, view hospital specific metrics. They click on that, they get a completely different screen. And again, it's just one. So click hide or show. Even the description changes when you click it, so you know what's going on. And so you can it's quickly and easily use this. Now, the remarkable thing about this is David and his team of one created this in 3 weeks from scratch at the beginning of the COVID outbreak, because they needed to manage drugs and PPE equipment across their estate. And not only that, but they had to get it out in such a way that people could use it. I mean, the idea of saying, well, we'll put it all in a data warehouse and then we'll just give the end users, the doctors, the nurses, and everybody, we'll give them an end user query tool. No, that's exactly the wrong thing. You've got to give them a streamlined app just like this that allows them, they didn't have time to train them on it. It had to be explicitly usable from from minute one so that people knew what to do with it. And that, I mean, so to me, that's a great example of what we're talking about here, getting out to a wide audience. There were hundreds of users of that app, and they were I see you couldn't bring, they were up against it. It was a pandemic. They had to sort of push to get it out, and they couldn't set classroom training for weeks. They had to have something that was usable, and that's almost an iconic example of the sort of thing that we're talking about here. And you can contrast this with a quote. It's an amazing quote that I heard recently. So as I say, David did that. Actually, it wasn't on Snowflake. It was on top of another BI system. He did it in 3 weeks, quickly, easily, and at a sensible cost. Contrast that, I had a discussion with another BI executive at a large organization who said, I have a straightforward BI requirement to deliver existing data to a large group of users. But when I assess the cost of running up, and he said the name of his BI tool, a server for that capable of managing this, it's over $100,000 of software before I start. And one of the reasons for that is that if you use your existing BI tool for this, that does so many things. It's like pulling a cart behind you. It's like a Gartner BI platform. It does ad hoc, it does reporting, it does that. It does so many things that it's going to cost a lot and be quite sort of hard to implement. What we have here is Squirrel 365 and InfoBurst are absolutely focused on doing exactly what you're seeing here. It's a completely lean capability, and I guarantee that you won't be looking at anything like that cost if you come with us and try and build these apps, because it's about getting started. It's about getting things in and getting value from it quickly and easily, as I say, in days or weeks and not months or years. So what I'm going to do is go a bit more into the Snowflake world here and show you 3 applications. One you've already seen, but we'll dig into it a little more, and then 2 others, all of which are sitting on top of Snowflake. So the first one here is that, as I say, the city bikes with a twist, and the twist there is, let's go into Snowflake itself, and I look at here. And so what I did is I select the top bits from, so this is the table I'm using here. Actually, if you go in here and see count from rides, we see that there are 61.5 million rows in here, and it really just has everything from here along in is the data that comes with the Snowflake trial. What I've done is I went on this, amazing what you can find online, some regions and towns, and added them in. So I've got a hierarchy. So that hierarchy you saw me navigate was there. And so if I run this and get this, so you see, yes, it's amazing what you get, the Brimstone Desert and Airedale and Trelligon. It's like, yeah, I mean, who would have known that you could get sort of fantasy regions and towns to mold onto your demo data. But anyway, that's what I found. And so this is here. So if we go to, actually, I'm going to just do this select. I want to cancel. I don't want to do that. I want to just go in here. I've run that start marker because if I go into history, what I'm going to see here is that if I refresh this, it's just a marker, because these are all obviously queries. I mean, so there, select start marker. That's what I've just done now. So if I come back to my bikes here and I go to 2018, so I just run that query, it gives me that data. I come back here, we can see that's run the query. So if I refresh this, look, it's run a couple of queries. It's run the select region and select month. So it is computing directly against the database. So every time I come in here and I click on there, that's what's driving those queries down. And so when I drill into here, so it's live dynamic data against the database, which is and it's because in order to do this, you have to have something like Snowflake that's running real-time queries in an acceptable time for your end users. But when you have that, it is a remarkable capability. And sort of, as I say, it's a dashboard app, if you like, exactly like this, that was driving that remarkable story at the retailer I talked about before. But it's more than just, so there's the dynamic UI here, as I said before. As I drill down, it changes, and so I can see what I'm supposed to be doing. So it encourages, it's got what they call affordance. It sort of helps the user into it. And then we've got this one here, which is a more standard dashboard, but it is 2 features which are, I think, key to this process. One is the ability to interact with data. So and we'll see later, we're all based on a spreadsheet, which sounds weird, but is just the most flexible and powerful thing you're going to see for a while. And it's sort of, I can move this slider and so change the underlying assumptions in what is a spreadsheet model layered on top of this data, so I can see what's going on. And so that interactivity, again, can be incredibly useful for end users and trying to do what they need to do. Obviously here I can sort of change and to see different time periods, but I can also comment on this. So I can show the comments, and you can see there's one I did earlier. So if I now say a sort of a new snowflake comment, I'll just leave it like that and add that in. You see now it's there, it's added here, but it's also added it into, if I come in here and I refresh and see the queries I've run against Snowflake, there you go. I've added insert into comments, a new Snowflake comment. So I've added that in. So not only do we have read from there, but we have write back into the database. And that can be used for things like comments. It's also in more sophisticated models where I'm changing a lot of values. I might want to save scenarios. I can save those back to the database. I could save things back to trigger actions going on elsewhere. And for the applications world, in fact, David Baer, the chap who created that the dashboard at USPI, his definition of the difference between a dashboard and an app is an app can write back and make things change, whereas a dashboard just reads the data. And so that's another great example of that. And then a tiny one, and the reason for doing this is it doesn't have to be sort of a big fancy dashboard. Here I've got something similar. Again, it's a demo data set, again in Snowflake, where I've got I can see my different retailers. Every time I do this, it's going back to query the database to get the rows for the particular retailer. But what I can do here is I can say maybe go back to VHS and then say I've got Hot Wheels. And again, this is about building an interface. So what do I want to do? Well, if I click on that, I want to see the invoices. So that 10, how are they broken across invoices? Well, there are 4, 4, and 2 across these invoices. If I click on this invoice, I can say, well, actually, I want to update that. That's not, I want to order some more, or it wasn't right, I'm going to correct it. So I click 22, update, and having updated that, it changes here. It's changed in here, and you can see this bar for Hot Wheels is much bigger. But most importantly, well, as importantly, again, it's written back to the database. So I've got this sort of update orders, set quantity equals 22, where invoice equals 1056. So there's so not only is it sort of ability to drill down into data and then sort of, but also be able to sort of analyze data by modeling it, commenting on it, but also writing data back, for example, specific transactional information, maybe to correct it or to spark off actions for more orders or things like that. So it's really a closed loop way of doing things from the database back into the database. And in order to do this, to play in these sort of application worlds, there are a number of things you have to be able to do. You have to get easy access to data. And the next thing we're going to do is look at Squirrel and look at how you get hold of that data and how easy it is to manipulate it. Then a dynamic user interface. This is an app. This is not, however much it looks like a dashboard, these need to be apps. You need to be able to pop things up. You need to be able to change it dynamically so the user is guided through the process. Remember, the thing here is to get users using it with no training and to be able to get in, get what they need, get out, and get on with their jobs as quickly as possible. Data update and write back is key, and in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, modeling and scenario saving is also a big extra that can be built into these sort of things so that people can understand the results of moving things around. Sort of, I don't know whether it might be whether you want to say I'm going to move a product from this category to that category, or I want to up my assumptions in terms of how much revenue is going to grow. All those things are possible with that modeling capability. So with all of that sort of scene setting in terms of what we're trying to build here and how we can do it against Snowflake, what I'm going to do is just build some of it to show you why. So it's all very well me saying I can do all of that. So everything you've seen is a web app. It's output in a browser. So if I had an army of JavaScript, HTML developers, I could do, well, I would need some server-side developers as well to do the SQL and all that sort of stuff. But if I had an army of developers, yes, I could create that. But that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to do it in an agile fashion, do it quickly and as easily as possible, using skills that exist rather than having to retrain people into other things. And so that's why we're going to go into Squirrel and have a look at it. So the whole underpinning of Squirrel is the idea that we have a canvas, just like many other tools, where I can drop components on here. So maybe I'm going to do a table and a chart, classic sort of dashboard stuff. And then I want to get data into them. Well, the first place you get data from Squirrel is from the spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet layer that sits between the visualization and the data is the key as to why this is easier, quicker, faster, more agile than anything else. So what I can do is I can bind the data from the spreadsheet into these components. So I just click this, what I sort of refer to as the magic button. This is where the Squirrel starts exerting its power. I click on that and I say, okay, I want these in there. And now I've got a table of that data in there. I might want to turn off the styling, so I turn off the spreadsheet grid lines there. But actually, I might want to tart this up a little, so I can come in here, maybe put a border around it. I'm going to make that white on a black background, like that. And so if we update the styling, there we see we've got that. And now I can actually start using the power of the spreadsheet. So I can say total, and I'm going to add that up there like that, and then across. Oh, I don't want to copy that. So that's just going to be a number like that. And there we go. And maybe I'll just put a border around that as well, and maybe make it italic at the bottom, update the formatting on the table. So, oh, actually, it's not at the bottom there because I haven't extended the data. I have to bind it to take account of that sum that I've just added on there. So I would do that and update from there. We go. I've got my table there, nicely done, with some data that I had in the spreadsheet, now some calculated from the spreadsheet. I do exactly the same thing here with the chart. I'm going to bind this to California to Texas, and there we've got that. I can maybe obviously sort of change this, and that's the revenue data there. I don't want the subtitle. Actually, these are overlapping a bit, so I will go down to the x-axis and make it, I like it at 45 degrees, maybe turn off the title there, the x-axis title, because we know what it is, and maybe the y-axis title as well. So it's lots of capability there to be able to do what you need to be able to make that look there. Oh, actually, the last thing I want to do is make that center, because I like it in the center there. Very picky about that. So now I've got some data that was sitting in the spreadsheet, now represented on here. But you say, well, that's coming from the spreadsheet. What about my Snowflake stuff? Well, that's where InfoBurst comes in. So if I go back to my browser here, then I can go into the InfoBurst UI. It's timed out, so I need to get in again. So I come into my Snowflake demo connection here. And what I've got a number of queries here, and we're going to be looking at this one, which is the retail sales. Now, the great thing about when Squirrel operates with databases is you usually only need really straightforward SQL. You don't need these complicated joins and pivots and all this sort of stuff, and I'll show you why in a minute. So I've got a very simple, almost the most straightforward BI query you could possibly have. Select state, total of revenue, quantity, and margin from retail sales, group by state, order by state. That's it. It's as I say, possibly the simplest query you could have. This is running against Snowflake, brings me back this data here. So if I want to use this in my Squirrel project, what do? Well, I go down to connections, I add a database query, and then I'm going to need a URL to connect to the server. Well, I've actually already got it here, because I'll mistype it if I don't. So that's the server in there, and then I'm going to log in, and when I log in, it says which database you want to connect to. Well, it's the Snowflake demo you saw there. Which query? Well, it was the retail sales query that you saw. So somebody can prepare the queries, but then you don't need to understand the query if you're a Squirrel user. You just get the data you want. And now I'm going to go and say, well, where do you want it? Well, I want it in this, bind it to this destination here. So now I've got a set of data that's going into here. And so if I run this, there's an end user would see it. I come into preview and hey presto, I've got my data. Well, it's not that impressive because that data was there anyway. So what I'm going to do is maybe take this out of here. So there's no data in here. Now when I preview it, you'll see it is loading from the database. So that's coming, and if we go back into Snowflake, we'll see that query being executed and bringing that data back. So that's how easy it is to get the data in there. But that's not enough. We can't just get raw data in here. We also want to be able to manipulate that data. So it happens that this data in here is for 3 years, 2020, 2019, and 2018. Now what I want to do is I want to have a drop down that is going to control what's going on in there. So it's going to say, it's going to take its values from there. It's going to insert the label that the user chooses and put it into this cell in the spreadsheet here, and I'll make that yellow so that I know where it is later on. I'm going to say, actually, I want it to be defaulted to 2020 as a label there. And so now what you see, if I run this, I get in debug, so I can see what's going on in the spreadsheet. When I click this, you can see down here, this is changing that. So I need to use this to drive the query. Well, how do I do that? Well, I go back to here, and I have to make a small change to my query, make it a little more complex, but really not much. Select from where, oh, if I could type properly, year equals, and then we use this @ symbol to say I want a parameter. So that year just said that year means I'm going to substitute something into this query. So if I save this and run it in here, it says, oh, what year? So I say 2020, and I run that, then hey presto, I'm getting the numbers from Snowflake for 2020. So if I come back to Squirrel now and go back to my connector, then what I can do is if I actually click on here, if I come into here and reselect this, what we'll notice is it now is a parameter. And I could type 2020 in there and that would get the data for 2020. But the magic is I can bind this to here. So it's going to say I'm going to get it from the spreadsheet. So now what I've got, if I come in and debug this, I'm going to come in, it's going to, oh no, I know, sorry, one thing I haven't done, I wonder why it's not working. Because what I have to do is to say I want to refresh this query when that changes. So when I change this, I have to refresh that there. Now, when I come in here, it changes, goes to get the data. So that's the 2020 data. Now I do 2019, that's the 20, oh, and I've got these headings there, don't want those, so I can go and fix that. I don't want to include the column headings, so it looks better. So, because I already got them in the spreadsheet. There we go. So now I've got a chart and a table based on parameterized data coming out of Snowflake. And this didn't exist like 3 minutes ago. I've just done it in front of you. So it's, I mean, and really there's nothing else to this. It's just doing this in more ways, more spreadsheet logic. So spreadsheet logic is natural to many people. And so you can really start to sort of to build the sort of things that we saw before. But there are a couple of other things that aren't immediately obvious about the power of having the spreadsheet here. So for example, what if I wanted something that said, well, actually, I want California and Texas across the top, and then I want revenue, margin, quantity, and margin down the side. So remember here, if I come in, I've got these. So that's this data in here, and now I want to completely change it. So I want to pivot it and take a couple of different states. Now, to get this query to pivot would be a sophisticated capability in SQL. To do this in another tool, you would probably have to learn their data manipulation language like that, the Power BI M language or Tableau Prep or whatever. You need to do something here. I can just do it. Look how easily I can do it. The fact that I haven't got a capital on there is irritating me, so I'll do that. So I want the revenue for California. I just say equals the revenue for California. I say I want the revenue for Texas. I say equals the revenue for Texas. I want the quantity for California. It's just that. I want the margin for California. It's equal that. And similarly for Texas. So in like 30 seconds, I've done something which is pivot this data because I have the spreadsheet at my fingertips that I can do this. And it's having the spreadsheet here. And I needn't be just a sort of an equals. I could do anything. I could maybe put sort of, I could add in here and insert a column and say west and east here and do a lookup with a VLOOKUP or a SUMIF function. You've got the whole power of Excel here to manipulate the data. That's why this can be so quick, because you don't need to go back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I need another query that looks at the data like this. You can do it all on the glass inside the designer. So now I've got this, I can say I'm going to add, let's make this a little smaller so I can add it in here. I'm going to add another data table here, and it's exactly the same as before. So I could do all that formatting, but I'm just going to do that. And because it's all dynamic, if I come in and run this, then when everything is updating the data, so you'll see that that data is now updating based on the numbers that are coming through from the database. So it comes in here, the database reads into here, which drives this table, and then this table is got these calculations are from there, that drives there, and that drives up there, and the chart's just on its own. And so what an end user would see is just this here, and so they can just merrily go on. They come in, they can use it because it's an interface that they understand, because it's been tailored to the task that they are looking at. To get this out, to publish it, I've got two options. I can publish it to the cloud, so the Squirrel cloud, you can publish it up and immediately have a link to it, or I can publish it locally. Some people, even though they've got Snowflake data in the cloud, they want to take it locally and export these maybe into their BI system and have an on-premise system. That both of those are entirely possible. If I come out and just look at when you do publish it to the cloud, you get a catalog like this whereby I can quickly and easily, oh, these are all my published dashboards. I can share, get a link. I actually can view them all in PowerPoint, so you can embed them into PowerPoint. If you want to see that happen, there are many on-demand webinars we have that will show you that. Or I can put it out over a web link, or I can embed it into another website using an iframe embed code. So all that's possible in terms of deploying this. But one other thing the last thing I want to show you is that actually we talked about dynamic UIs, and all of this, yeah, it's a drop down, but hey, well, that's not really that dynamic. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, well, actually, I might want to view one of these or other depending on a choice made by the user. I want to see the state view, the pivot or unpivoted view, should we say. And so what I can do is I can come in here, and then I can say I'm going to add a radio button, and that radio button is going to be what should we show? States as opposed to just the states or lines. So the line, depending on what's down the side, states down the side or the revenue lines down the side. And so I'm going to bind to the spreadsheet that component there. So it's going to be states or lines. I'm going to make it horizontal, and I'm going to again, when I click on this, or rather when the user clicks on it, I'm going to insert the label into this cell here. So that's dynamic, driven into the spreadsheet. I'll make that yellow again as I did before. And now this is the second magic point in Squirrel, is dynamic visibility, as it's called. So what I'm going to say is that this table here, so that's the states table, I'm going to say that is going to be visible when this cell here is equal to the input from the radio button as states. And then the one here, the smaller one, the same cell that drives it, but it's going to be visible when its value is lines. So now what I've got, when I come in here, then actually, no, what I'm going to do first is give this a default value, so that if I come in interactivity, selected item, and the default value, I'm going to the states view to start with. So I come in and I've got the states view. I click on this and I get the lines view. And so you can see how you can build up this application user interface. And when you saw me on the original dashboard where I was drilling down and icons were changing, or the chart turned into a table at the bottom level when I was looking at my transactions, all of that is driven in exactly the same way. I think I'm right in saying there's nothing else you need to know to do the sort of things that we're looking at here. And so the spreadsheet magic that you've just seen in Squirrel allows you to leverage existing skills, no code. You don't have to learn Python or JavaScript or any of those things. There's a wide audience who can do this. And the components can read from and write to formulas. There's two-way interaction with that logic. You can have dynamic UI control that's also controlled by the formulas. So the components can, as you saw, can write to the sheet, which can change the dynamic nature. It's all the same sort of theory. And you get this cell by cell access to your query data. And the last thing I want to leave you with is where you can end up with this, which is another video. So Salesforce are one of our customers, and they use Squirrel 365 and InfoBurst, not on top of Snowflake, but on a different database. And what they have done is nothing short of remarkable. And so remarkable. Here we go. So this is Ziv Barzili, who's the guy who built this. So notice these menus where you can click and completely change what you're doing. You've got configuration of the data entry. So every time you click on one of these, this is a calculator of business value. This is taking out different drivers of business value. You can have them in. It changes the user interface when you choose them. I can select on the chart to change what's going on down here. You've got various different ways of selecting data. This is the one that's interesting. This is actually changing their total cost of ownership for their Amazon, for a customer to deploy on Amazon. You can do it with buttons, with sliders. So you've got a full range of capabilities there. It's also got interactive modeling built into this, where he does ROI over 5 years or ROI over 12 years to see different scenarios. You can save those scenarios. I talked before, he's saved that. That's now saving it back to the underlying database, so so the customer can retrieve that later. And an amazing set of dashboards about the output, about how a particular scenario impacts the business. And in fact, the way Salesforce use this is they allow they use it to help customers understand the business value of what they're about to buy. So the salespeople sit down with them and work through all of these, and then these last few pages are typically presented in board meetings where they look at the output and decide on whether they're going to buy this. And Ziv talks about sort of $100 million in additional contract value sort of being sort of influenced by this. But the interesting thing is that he got a quote. He built this in about 3 months, him and a half-time one other person. He got a quote from IT if they were building it as a normal app with JavaScript and HTML, 3 people for over a year, 10 times more, 10 times longer. That just gives you a flavor for just how significant the savings can be and how quickly you can get going with Squirrel. So Squirrel and InfoBurst, stunning web-based applications and dashboards, apps being key in all of that, from your Snowflake and other data in weeks or days, not months or years, with clicks, not code, just spreadsheet knowledge, at a truly amazing low total cost of ownership. So hopefully you feel we have delivered on today's premise, how you can get data more easily, do apps, get to more people more easily. They'll be more productive. You'll be recognized more, faster, lower cost. And it really is about taking this step from business intelligence to business applications, from BI, from dashboards to applications. That is the new wave that we're going to be seeing. Now, if you are interested, if this has piqued your interest, then talk to us. Contact us on info@squirrel365.io. More details at squirrel365.io on our website, or indeed ask a question now, because I'm going to pass back to Mark, and he is going to take this through the questions that have come in and any that come in now. Mark.
Thanks, Donald. Yes, there have been a number of questions that have come in both on the LinkedIn live stream and also here on the Zoom platform. So we're going to kick off with Nikki's asked a question, and Nikki was asking, does a spreadsheet scale to large amounts of data, as we've got hundreds of millions of rows worth of data in our Snowflake database?
So yes and no. No, you can't get 100 million rows in a spreadsheet interface for a couple of reasons. One is it is emulating a spreadsheet, so it's not really suitable for that. But also remember, you're running this in a browser. This is web technology, so 100 million rows in a web browser in front of a customer, a end user, probably doesn't work. But the beauty of this, as we saw earlier, is you don't need that. The database at the back end is doing the heavy lifting. So yes, you can have 100 million rows. You can have provided Snowflake, and I'm seriously impressed with Snowflake, having used it over the last couple of days to put this demo together. It is a remarkable platform, and provided it can return your queries in a sensible amount of time, then it's doing the hard work. So you only need to present as we saw in that the bike data. Every time I click, it's doing another query, so I never have to bring back the whole data set or anything like it, anything near like it. It's just bringing it into the app. Every time I click, it's being another slice of data, so that I can quickly and easily navigate the end user, or they can navigate themselves to the bit that they want, whether that be one number out of 100 million. Our objective is to get them to that number as quickly as possible.
Great, thanks for that, Donald. Sub has his said, apologies for the pronunciation there if I got that wrong. He has asked, or she has asked, where is this? Yeah, you've got the data in from Snowflake into Squirrel Project. Can a user of the application that you built, can they now get that out into Excel?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to the last question that you can. So there is there's an export to Excel functionality. So there's a component in Squirrel. You just drag it on, and you say, right, take this range, and when the user pushes a button, they'll export that to Excel. And the beauty of that is that, as in the last question, you've done the heavy lifting. You've got the data you're interested in. So you might now want to take it out in Excel and maybe make it look different, add some value in Excel to it, put it into a PowerPoint. That is a perfect use for Excel and for PowerPoint, for Office tools. When you've got a small amount of data that you then want to present on, stick it in a presentation, email it to someone, all that makes sense. The great thing about the app, again, as I said before, it's taken you from this massive amount of data down to the bit you really want, and yes, push button, export to Excel. You could be in and out in sort of 30 seconds and get exactly what you need to respond to the query that someone's asked of you, and sort of drive on with the business.
So they just asked a slight twist to that question as well, to that answer. Would it be possible if they had a template? So I guess that they provided the template in Excel. So I guess here they're looking at maybe writing into Excel.
So that's an interesting point. That's not something that we do today. What you could do is you could export a particular shape of data from Squirrel, and then that would open in Excel. Then you could cut and paste it into a template. But it's come up before, the idea of being able to say, actually, when I export, I want it to have this heading and that footer and these other things around it. So it's not something we do today, but definitely something that we may well do in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And also may well find the Smartsheet live event next Thursday, of interest there as well, because we're going to be showing some of that capability. Fantastic.
Indeed.
Richard had asked us, we are pushed for time, apologise, we've just gone over a little bit. Richard from LinkedIn Live has asked us, you've shown us how we can connect to the cloud, but what about on-premise databases and on-premise data?
So yeah, as I said during the presentation, so the COVID PPE drug dashboard, that was against an on-premise system using the same technology, InfoBurst and Squirrel 365, and indeed you could do both at the same time. So you can absolutely link against on-premise data, whether that be in a BI system like Business Objects or another sort of database, Oracle or SQL, and you could do that. In fact, you could have one app, one dashboard, which goes across both. So you might have sort of sales data in one and sort of marketing data in another, one on the cloud, one on premise, pull it together, and you can put it seamlessly all for the end user. They would never know where it had come from. It's just there for them to use.
Great stuff. Let me just a question here from Zoom. Peter has asked, can you just briefly go over the InfoBurst Squirrel connectivity so you can grasp that properly?
So basically, the connectivity is, so Squirrel provides all the capability to build the UI, the interactivity on top of the spreadsheet. So it provides all the components and all, and you could do all of that just on a spreadsheet, and many of our customers do. And if you come to the website and look at our gallery, you can see you can create anything from a revenue calculator that shows you the effect of changing your revenue, say the churn on your revenue, or a value calculator that helps you sell to your customers and explain the value of your product. Or even one of the things we've done is a clock in PowerPoint. There's so many different things you could do just on a spreadsheet, and that's the bit that Squirrel does, is create that sort of interface and manipulating the data. What InfoBurst does is connect it out into other domains. So the InfoBurst is on the server. So Squirrel sits on the client. InfoBurst sits on a server side, and it then accesses the data and it manages the queries. As you saw me in the InfoBurst interface, that's where you create your queries. And the great thing about that is a separation of responsibilities. So you can get someone, even though I was saying that SQL is very straightforward, which it is, maybe it would flummox an end user. So what you can do is you can pre-prepare those queries, put them into InfoBurst, and then as far as the Squirrel user is concerned, they're just picking, oh, I want retail sales, oh, I want bike data, and it's, hey presto, it just works. So the separation of responsibilities is InfoBurst looks after the queries, the access to the database. It also has capabilities to cache and schedule and do all sorts of clever things there if your database isn't quite as fast as Snowflake. And then Squirrel takes that data dynamically and renders the UI and all the capability on top of that.
Fantastic. And just on that, there's another question that's come in regarding the communication between InfoBurst and Snowflake. Is that secured?
Yes, that's actually using the Snowflake ODBC driver, which runs over HTTPS. So yes, it's all a secure connection.
Great. You mentioned, that's another question, you mentioned Squirrel 365 Cloud ability to store multiple dashboards. Do you also support multi-tenant and user management?
So in terms of the cloud today, no. Our cloud today is not multi-tenanted. It's or multi-account. If you wanted that, you would have to do that with with exporting locally to a local system. But it's watch this space. That's very next on our roadmap is sort of multi-tenant user by user access in the cloud.
Thank you, Donald, and that's about it. We've wrapped up all the questions. There are a couple of questions also that were answered by the panelists live in the panel, so thank you for that. Thank you to Paul Grill of Infosol and Donald of Squirrel 365, and for you all for joining us today. And we hope to see you again on many more events that we're running through the rest of 2021. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.